Okay, great to be here. You've heard about culture, you've heard about law. I'm going to get into politics and show us that we think about food in what are seen to be somewhat radically different worlds. And this title, Between Two Worlds, is not made up by me, but made up by people who actually live and breathe and eat in the worlds of food. So if you're in that world and get emails with the regularity that I get, you get messages from these worlds with some regularity. So just the other day, I got a message about a new report that had appeared, a policymaker's guide to the GMO controversies, and it goes on in somewhat heightened rhetoric, but unfortunately the continued development of GMOs has been endangered by neo-Luddite opposition supported by a series of media-generated controversies. So, these are terms that appear kind of frequently on that side of the discourse. But the same week, I got another email about a book that's been published about EPA's failure to deal with pesticide chemicals in an appropriate way. And there you see that part of the charge is that the result of EPA's misbehavior is a complex and elaborate illusion of governmental precaution, which ultimately gives the petrochemical industries and agribusiness free rein. So the same business that produces GMOs and other agricultural products, is cast in radically different ways in these kinds of things. And you'll have to take my word as a qualitative researcher who has never done the statistics that I get this several times in a month. So what's going on here? One of the presuppositions of my field of politics of science and technology is to start with the presumption that if people are genuinely upset about things, then methodologically, you should not go in knowing what they're upset about, that this is actually something you should be asking them. So in this domain of GMOs and food production, you find, if you go in with that sort of neutral presumption, that there are all kinds of claims being made about the technology and about what it's going to do for us. So one of those claims is that it's going to make nature better. It's going to make it more orderly, behave right, weeds won't be in the wrong places, and so on and so forth, and therefore we will get much more yield per hectare and per plant, and generally be in a far better position to feed a world where the population is growing, but the total planetary surface of arable land is not growing. So we need to get more and more out of there, and we have to make nature behave better. So that is certainly one kind of claim that you get. Another sort of claim is in that phrase neo-Luddite. I don't know why the people who wrote that policy report put it in quotations, but I'm borrowing their quotations. Where are these neo-Luddites? Well, they're uprooting plants in, if you recognize the cultural position of that pith helmet, you will know that this is Britain. You may not know instantly that it's a peer of the realm who's uprooting the plants, but if you've been watching Downton Abbey, you will know that the relationship between the aristocracy and the mere bobbies is something that is itself culturally embedded and perhaps not the easiest thing to understand. But in any case, the neo-Luddites here are people who are in positions of very considerable power and prestige. If you go across the channel to a different place, you will find that Germans are also protesting against GMOs, but they're doing it in a different sort of way. Through artwork positioned in front of a building, which again, if you have the cultural knowledge, you will recognize is the Houses of Parliament. So the very same debate that's playing out in America on the fields where you're remaking nature is playing out in Britain in class-related conflicts about the place of nature, and in Germany as a legislative sort of debate. So what is at stake here? And if we go in without the sort of presupposition that it's the neo-Luddites and the anti-scientists or whatever, we might say that there are kinds of innovation going on here that are about the kinds of politics that people want. And from that standpoint, my own research looks cross-nationally and comparatively at the kind of politics that people have constructed around agricultural technologies. So what are these worlds when they are apart from each other? One way to think about them is the way the political commentator and public intellectual Robert Kagan has written about them, which is that Europe is just a totally different world. On a day when I learned shortly ago that Dr. Spock has died, maybe we think about different worlds in slightly different terms, but in any case, Kagan also thinks about it in sort of Star Trek-y terms. He thinks Europeans are from Venus and Americans are from Mars, but the language is this: it's time to stop pretending that we share a common view of the world, or even that they occupy the same world. Well, if you take a somewhat more sensitized view of the politics, you might end up concluding that in America we're suffering from something that we typically think of as denialism. We typically attach it to climate, but you might conclude that we also attach it to GMOs. This is a slide that lists out a number of episodes in which GMOs have not behaved in the way that they behave. Now, typically we think it's kind of anti-scientific to give different explanations for the same behavior all the time. Instead, we look for regularities. But if you look at these GMO escape cases, you find that different public explanations have been given for each one, suggesting that some generality possibly is being missed. If you investigate further, you will find that across the three countries that I've described, Britain, Germany, and the US, there are very different cultures of expectation about how public knowledge gets generated and who counts as an expert and how we test expertise. So I am not showing this to you for the sake of telling you what's in each box of the matrix, but to suggest that if we are worlds apart, it's not because someone's from Venus and someone's from Mars, but that we have actually quite different expectations about how to run our politics in relation to expertise, how we generate trust around technical claims, and at the end of the day, what kinds of products we want to put into our bodies on the basis of those claims. So I will conclude by saying that the question, what kinds of foods do we want, reduces or translates into my kind of research into a slightly different question, which is what kinds of politics and ethics do we want? Thank you.